A technology company discovers that someone is stealing gigabytes of its most sensitive data. The attacker knows exactly where to look. Engineers check cloud accounts. Developers review logs. A senior employee joins the investigation. He knows the infrastructure. He has administrative access. He seems useful. There's only one problem. The man helping them hunt the hacker is the hacker. His name is Nickolas Sharp. And over the next few months, he will extort his own employer, mislead the people investigating him, and reinvent himself more than once. But the strangest part is how he gets caught. Because Sharp makes one tiny mistake, and for a few seconds, the mask disappears. Sharp worked as a senior developer for a publicly traded technology company based in New York. He was not an outsider trying to break through a firewall. He was already trusted. He had credentials that gave him access to the company's Amazon Web Services infrastructure and its GitHub servers. And in December 2020, while interviewing for a job somewhere else, Sharp began secretly abusing that access. He downloaded gigabytes of confidential company data. Most cyber attack stories begin with someone trying to find a way in. Sharp did not need a way in. He already had the keys. The challenge was making sure nobody realized he was using them. So, while accessing the company's systems, Sharp used a Surfshark VPN to hide the internet address he was connecting from. Then, he started manipulating the evidence. According to federal prosecutors, Sharp altered log retention policies and other files in an attempt to conceal his activity. He even modified session file names so that some of the malicious activity appeared to belong to other employees. He was not simply covering his tracks, he was laying tracks towards somebody else. That made the situation inside the company far more dangerous. Investigators were not looking at a clean crime scene. The person who created it understood the investigation. He knew what defenders could see. He knew what records existed, and he knew how those records might be interpreted. Then, the company discovered the incident. An internal response began. Systems had to be checked, access had to be reviewed. The company needed to understand what data had been taken and whether the attackers still had a way back in. And Sharp joined the team working to remediate the very breach he had created. Think about the advantage that gave him. He could see what the company knew. He could see what it did not know. He could watch investigators move closer or farther away from him in real time. The company thought it had an attacker somewhere outside the room. The attacker was helping run the meeting. And then Sharp escalated. In January 2021, the company received a ransom demand from someone claiming to be the anonymous hacker behind the breach. The price? 50 Bitcoin. At the time, about $1.9 million. In exchange, the attacker offered to return the stolen files and identify what he described as a remaining backdoor in the company's systems. Sharp was essentially offering to sell the company the solution to a mystery he had created himself. He stole the data. He helped investigate the theft. Then he put on a different identity and offered to explain how the attacker had done it. The company refused to pay, so Sharp increased the pressure. He published some of the stolen files on a publicly accessible online platform. Now the problem was no longer contained inside the company. The data was outside. The ransom attempt had failed, and the person behind it still appeared to be anonymous. Sharp had privileged access. He understood the infrastructure. He had manipulated logs. He had tried to shift suspicion toward coworkers, and he was hiding his real location behind a VPN. So, how did they find him? Not because of some dramatic confession. Not because Sharp suddenly gave himself away in a message. It happened because something completely ordinary went wrong. His internet connection went down. For most of the theft, Sharp had been using Surfshark VPN to mask his home IP address while connecting to the company's AWS and GitHub systems. But during the exfiltration of company data, his home experienced a temporary internet outage. And when the connection changed, Sharp's real home IP address became exposed. For a moment, the anonymous attacker was not anonymous anymore. The activity that was supposed to disappear behind a VPN now pointed back toward a real internet connection at his house. That tiny technical failure became one of the most important clues in the investigation. Sharp had spent his time manipulating logs, disguising sessions, and hiding his location, but his own internet connection betrayed him. The man trying to erase himself from the attack had briefly signed it with a connection leading back to his own home. On March 24, 2021, FBI agents arrived at Sharp's residence in Portland, Oregon. They executed a search warrant and seized electronic devices. Among them was a laptop prosecutors said Sharp had used to steal the company's data. But even with FBI agents inside his home, Sharp continued trying to maintain the story. He told the FBI he was not the attacker. He also claimed he had not used Surfshark before the company discovered the breach. Investigators had records showing something different. Sharp had purchased the VPN service in July 2020, months before the incident. When agents confronted him with that information, prosecutors say Sharp claimed someone else must have used his PayPal account to buy it. The careful insider operation was beginning to collapse into increasingly desperate explanations, but somehow Sharp still was not finished. Several days after the FBI searched his home, a new version of the story began appearing in the media. An anonymous source claiming to be an internal whistleblower described the breach as something very different. According to that narrative, an unknown external attacker had gained powerful administrator access to the company's cloud systems. The company, the source suggested, had badly mishandled the incident. But prosecutors later said that supposed whistleblower was Sharp. So now he had occupied several identities: the employee, the attacker, the member of the remediation team, the anonymous extortionist, and now the supposed whistleblower exposing the company. Same man, different mask. And this final mask caused damage on a completely different scale. After the misleading articles were published, the company's share price fell by roughly 20% over about 2 days. More than $4 billion in market capitalization disappeared. Not because $4 billion of equipment had been destroyed, not because the stolen files themselves were worth $4 billion, but because trust collapsed. Investors believed they were looking at a company that had suffered a severe external compromise and failed to properly disclose or manage it. Sharp had turned the story about the breach into another weapon. He also attempted to encourage regulators in the United States and abroad to investigate the company based on his false allegations. But by then, the evidence around him was closing. The VPN records existed. The home IP address had appeared. His devices had been seized. His explanations to the FBI could be checked. And the anonymous attacker, employee, and whistleblower were slowly becoming one person. Nickolas Sharp eventually pleaded guilty to intentionally damaging a protected computer, wire fraud, and making false statements to the FBI. In May 2023, he was sentenced to 6 years in federal prison. He also received 3 years of supervised release and was ordered to pay more than $1.5 million in restitution. And this case is unsettling for a reason. Sharp did not defeat the company's defenses from the outside. He abused something companies cannot operate without: trust. Employees need access. Developers need credentials. Administrators need powerful permissions. The real failure was not simply that Sharp had legitimate access. It was that he could abuse that access, manipulate the evidence, and then participate in the response to the incident he had created. Because sometimes the attacker is not the person trying to get through the door. Sometimes he already has a badge. And sometimes, while everyone else is searching for the hacker,
He is holding the flashlight.